It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend. That's what Daniel kept telling his wife as they packed up the tent, loaded the car, and drove their 2 kids into the woods. No phones, no noise, just the sound of wind and water. The family laughed, roasted marshmallows, and told stories by the fire. Everything felt normal until their little boy, Ethan, ran toward the river. He tripped, and before anyone could react, he was gone. The splash echoed through the trees. Daniel jumped in after him, shouting his name again and again. A few seconds later, Ethan surfaced, coughing, gasping, but alive. Only Daniel never came back up, and when the mother held her son, she screamed. His skin was ice cold, and where her hands touched him, her flesh began to blister and smoke. That night, under the full moon, the forest went completely silent. The forest was quiet, too quiet. The only sounds were the soft rush of the river and the distant crackle of the campfire that was slowly dying behind them. Laura's arms shook as she held Ethan against her chest, his small body trembling uncontrollably. She could still smell the river on him, mud, moss, and something else, a metallic scent, like blood mixed with rust. Her palms were burning, small red blisters bubbling on her skin where she had touched him, but she didn't care. "Daniel!" she screamed again, voice breaking through the cold night. No answer. The current moved fast, dark water twisting and swallowing the moonlight. Ethan's eyes stared wide, pupils dilated, his lips pale blue. He wasn't crying. That was what scared her most. Her son always cried, even over scraped knees or cold baths. But now there was nothing, just silence. "Honey, talk to me," she whispered, brushing the wet hair from his face. He blinked slowly, then tilted his head toward her, like he was trying to remember something. "Mommy?" he said, voice thin and trembling. "It's cold." Laura wrapped him in the blanket from the car and turned back toward the campsite. Every few steps, she looked over her shoulder at the river, praying she'd see Daniel's head break the surface. Nothing, only ripples moving in slow, deliberate circles. Felt wrong, as if the water was watching her. By the time they reached the tent, Laura was shaking so badly she could hardly unzip it. Her daughter, Lily, sat near the fire, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Mom, where's Dad?" she asked. Laura wanted to answer, but her throat locked. She set Ethan down beside the fire, hoping the warmth would help. The boy just sat there, staring into the flames, water still dripping from his sleeves. The drops hissed when they touched the fire, releasing small wisps of steam. Then he spoke. "It's quiet now," he murmured almost to himself. He stopped screaming. Laura froze. "Who stopped screaming, baby?" she asked carefully. Ethan didn't look up. "Daddy," he whispered. For a moment, all she could hear was the crackling of the wood. The forest around them seemed to lean in, listening. Laura pulled her daughter close. "Stay here," she told them, grabbing the flashlight from her backpack. She walked back to the river's edge, her shoes sinking into the wet mud. "Daniel," she called again, tears mixing with the mist. "Please answer me." The beam of light scanned the surface, nothing but ripples. Then something glimmered beneath the water. A hand, pale, motionless, swaying in the current. She screamed and fell backward, but when she looked again, it was gone. Heart pounding, Laura stumbled toward camp. Ethan was still by the fire, watching her with those wide, unblinking eyes. The reflection of the flames danced across his wet skin, and for a fleeting moment, she saw something move beneath it, like shadows swimming under glass. That night, Laura didn't sleep. She kept staring at her son, wondering if the river had given him back, or something else entirely. The night dragged on like an open wound. Every snap of a twig, every flicker from the dying fire made Laura flinch. She had wrapped her hands in gauze from the first aid kit, but the burns throbbed, pulsing with a strange heat that seemed to grow whenever she looked at Ethan. He hadn't moved for hours, just sat there, perfectly still. His eyes locked on the flames as though he was learning how to imitate being human. When dawn finally broke, the forest didn't look the same. The mist hadn't lifted. Instead, it hung low to the ground, crawling through the trees like smoke. Lily was curled up beside her mother, clutching her stuffed rabbit, but Ethan was gone. Laura's heart lurched. "Ethan?" she called, scrambling to her feet. Her voice echoed through the trees, too loud, like the forest didn't want to hear it. A faint rustling came from behind the tent. She ran toward it, pushing through the wet ferns. Ethan stood there, barefoot, his wet pajamas caked with mud. He was staring into the woods. "Sweetheart, you scared me," Laura said, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't wander off." Ethan turned his head slowly, and Laura froze. His eyes looked darker, no longer the soft brown she remembered, but almost black, reflecting no light at all. "I wasn't wandering," he said softly. "They wanted to show me something." Laura's mouth went dry. "Who's they?" she asked. Ethan smiled. A slow, crooked curve that didn't belong on his face. "The ones under the water," he said. "They said Daddy's with them now." The air grew colder. Laura grabbed his hand, but the moment her skin brushed his, she felt that burning again. Sharp electric pain shooting up her arm. She yanked her hand back with a cry. Ethan looked down at her blistered fingers, his expression almost curious. "It hurts, doesn't it?" he said, as if testing the words. That's what they said would happen. By the time Lily woke up, Laura had packed their things. "We're leaving," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "We'll drive to town and get help." But the moment she turned the car key, the engine only clicked. Dead. She tried again. Nothing. Her phone, too, showed no signal. Even the radio hissed with static that occasionally whispered fragments of voices. Distant, echoing, like words spoken underwater. Ethan stood near the tree line, watching. "We can't go yet," he said quietly. "They don't want us to." Laura's chest tightened. "Ethan, please just get in the car," she begged. He tilted his head, listening to something she couldn't hear. Then, almost gently, he said, "Mom, you shouldn't have pulled me out." The words hit her like ice water. She stared at him, her breath catching in her throat. "What did you say?" Ethan blinked. "You pulled me out," he repeated. "But I wasn't supposed to come back. They were going to keep me. Now they're angry." Behind him, the mist thickened, curling like fingers around the trees. Somewhere deep in the forest, the river began to whisper. Softly at first, then louder, until the sound became a distant chorus of voices calling her name. Laura gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. Even though the car wouldn't start, she kept turning the key again and again, hoping the sound of the engine would drown out the whispers. But they were everywhere now, rising from the forest, slithering through the mist, and echoing from the direction of the river. Each voice called her name differently, some gentle, some broken, some sounding like Daniel. She covered her ears and shouted, "Stop it!" But the sound only grew louder, vibrating in her bones. Lily whimpered in the back seat, clutching her stuffed rabbit tight. "Mommy, what are they saying?" she asked in a trembling voice. Laura turned, trying to smile through her fear. "It's just the wind, sweetheart." But even as she said it, the air in the car grew heavy, thick with moisture, and her breath fogged the glass. She looked through the windshield and froze. Ethan stood outside, motionless, staring straight at her. The mist swirled around his small body like it was alive. His clothes still clung to him, dripping as though he had just come out of the water again. "Ethan!" she shouted, fumbling with the door handle. "Get back inside." But he didn't move. He lifted one hand and pointed toward the river. Then, with that same unnatural calmness, he said, "They want to see you too, Mommy." Laura's throat went dry. She got out of the car, every instinct screaming not to. The forest seemed to breathe with her steps, the sound of rushing water growing clearer with every one. Ethan waited by the bank, eyes dark and hollow, the reflection of the water rippling across his face like shadows crawling beneath his skin. When Laura reached him, she noticed something strange. The surface of the river wasn't behaving normally. It wasn't flowing anymore. It was still, perfectly still, like a sheet of glass. Beneath it, something moved, shapes twisting, turning, almost human. "Ethan, come here," she whispered, voice shaking. "We need to go." He didn't answer. His gaze was locked on the water. "They said Daddy's waiting," he murmured. "He wants you to come too." "Ethan," she said firmly, reaching for him, but she hesitated. The burns on her hands still ached, and she could feel the heat rising again as she got closer. "You're not my son," she whispered before she could stop herself. Ethan turned slowly, the faintest smile curling his lips. "Then why did you save me?" he asked. Laura took a step back, heart pounding. "Because I'm your mother," she cried. The river stirred. Something broke the surface. A pale face, eyes wide open, hair drifting like weeds. Daniel. His skin was gray and torn, lips moving soundlessly. Laura screamed, stumbling backward, but Ethan didn't even flinch. He just stared at the figure, then at her, his voice soft and eerily calm. "He's not angry at me, Mommy. He's angry at you." The water began to rise, creeping toward her feet. The whispers turned into cries, hundreds of them, pulling, begging, accusing. Laura grabbed Ethan and ran, her burned hands screaming in pain, dragging him toward the tent. But as they crossed the clearing, she realized something terrible. Ethan wasn't breathing. His small chest didn't move at all. And still, he whispered, "They said it's your turn now." Laura burst into the tent, dragging Ethan behind her. Lily screamed as they fell inside, the flaps snapping shut behind them. The air was freezing, thick with the scent of wet earth and decay. Laura's hands were shaking so badly she could barely zip it closed. Her palms were red and raw, burned deeper now, as though fire lived beneath her skin. Ethan sat up slowly, his head tilting toward her in that unnatural way again. His lips were pale and cracked, but when he spoke, the voice that came out wasn't his. It was layered, Ethan's soft tone buried beneath something deeper, older, and cold. "You shouldn't have come back," it said. Laura crawled backward, clutching Lily close to her. "Stay away from us," she warned, her voice cracking. "Whatever you are, you're not my son." Ethan smiled faintly, and the tent light flickered, dimming with every breath he took. "Your son's gone," the voice murmured. "The river took him because it needed something. Takes what's loved the most. That's the rule." Laura's vision blurred with tears. "Then what are you?" she whispered. "I'm what's left," it said simply. "I'm what crawled back when you pulled him out." Lily began to cry, hiding her face in Laura's shoulder. "Mommy, make him stop," she whimpered. Laura tried to shush her, but the air around them seemed to tighten, pressing against her chest. The temperature dropped suddenly. Frost crept across the inside of the tent walls, delicate patterns spreading like veins. Ethan, or whatever was inside him, slowly lifted his head. His eyes were completely black now, reflecting nothing. "He's calling you," the voice said. "He's lonely down there." Then came the sound again, the river whispering. It wasn't just outside, it was inside the tent. Dripping sounds echoed around them, even though everything was dry. A trickle of water slid from Ethan's mouth, down his chin, pooling on the floor of the tent. Laura froze, watching the puddle widen and darken. It wasn't clear water. It was black, like oil, and it carried a faint metallic smell. Suddenly, Ethan lunged forward. Laura screamed, pushing Lily behind her as she grabbed one of the metal tent poles. The boy's movements were jerky, wrong, as if he was being pulled by invisible strings. His voice came again, louder now, layered with many others. Men, women, children, all whispering through his small throat. "You took him from us?" they hissed. You pulled him from our home. Laura swung the pole, hitting his shoulder. The sound it made wasn't right. It was like striking wet wood. Ethan fell back, motionless for a moment, then slowly sat up again. His neck turned too far, cracking as his head righted itself. It hurts, he whispered, almost in Ethan's real voice now. Mommy, please, it hurts. Laura hesitated, her grip faltering. That was Ethan's tone, small, scared, real. Ethan? She said, crawling closer, tears streaming. Help me, he sobbed. But then, his mouth twisted into a grin so wide it split the corners of his lips. Got you, the deeper voice growled. The tent walls suddenly rippled, water pouring from the seams, flooding the floor. Laura grabbed Lily and scrambled out into the rain, but the forest was gone. Only water surrounded them now, endless and dark. The campsite drowned beneath it, and in the reflection, she saw her husband's face beneath the surface, smiling. The world around Laura had changed. The forest she'd known, the one full of wind and trees and light, was gone. In its place stretched a dark, endless marsh. The river had swallowed everything. The car, the tent, even the campfire. All that remained were the tops of drowned trees sticking out like blackened bones. A low mist crawled across the surface, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The air smelled of rot and something ancient, something alive. Laura clutched Lily in her arms, her heart hammering so violently she could hear it echo through the stillness. Mommy, where are we? Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Laura didn't know how to answer. She could still see Ethan a few feet away, standing ankle-deep in the water, perfectly still. The reflection of his face rippled beneath him, but the reflection wasn't the same. It smiled when he didn't. Ethan, she shouted. Come to me. Please, baby. He turned slowly, his movements sluggish, as if the air itself resisted him. It's too late, he said softly. His voice was weaker now, closer to Ethan's real voice, but his eyes were empty, black voids that reflected nothing. They don't want you to leave. You're part of it now. Laura shook her head violently. No, I'm taking you both home. She waded forward, the icy water cutting through her jeans, numbing her legs. Each step sank deeper than the last, as though the ground beneath her feet were dissolving. The mist swirled higher, and the whispers began again. Only this time she could make out the words. Give him back. Return what you stole. Trade for what's lost. The voices circled her, echoing like 1,000 overlapping cries. Laura clutched Lily tighter and screamed into the fog. Take me instead. Just give me my son back. The water stirred violently, churning around her legs. Something brushed past her calf, cold, smooth, like the hand of a corpse. She cried out, stumbling, and the moment she did, Ethan's reflection broke free from the water. It was him, but not him. A dark, shimmering figure rose beside him, its face a mirror image of her son's, but hollow and stretched, as though carved from shadow. It reached toward her, dripping black water from its fingers. Mommy, both voices said at once, Ethan's and the thing's, one from the shore, one from the water. Help me. Laura's breath hitched. She didn't know which was real. The creature in the water trembled, its expression twisting with pain. It's cold down there, it whispered. I don't like it anymore. Lily started to cry again. Mommy, please, I want to go home. The voices rose into a deafening chorus. The water surged higher, pulling at her knees, her waist. Ethan, or the thing wearing him, watched without moving. He's waiting, it said. If you want him back, you have to come where he is. Laura turned toward the sound of the river. She could see a faint light shimmering deep beneath the surface, gold, flickering, like fire beneath the waves. It called to her, whispering Daniel's name, Ethan's laughter, promises of warmth. Her mind screamed, don't go. But her heart took one step forward into the dark. The cold wrapped around Laura's legs like chains as she stepped deeper into the water. Each movement felt heavier, slower, as though unseen hands were gripping her ankles, pulling her downward. Behind her, Lily's cries faded into the mist. "Mommy, don't go!" the little girl sobbed, but the voice sounded distant, muffled, as if coming from another world. The whispering river hummed in her ears, its words blending with the sound of rushing water and Daniel's voice calling her name. She waded deeper until the water reached her chest. The icy current numbed her body, but her mind burned with one desperate thought: bring them back. Ethan stood on the bank, still and silent, his black eyes following her every move. The reflection beneath him shifted again, Daniel's face staring up from the depths, lips moving soundlessly. "I'm coming," Laura whispered, tears mixing with the water. "I'm coming, Daniel." The surface broke suddenly. A pale hand shot upward, fingers thin and translucent, grasping for her wrist. She screamed, but didn't pull away. Instead, she gripped the hand tightly, hoping, praying. It was her husband. The touch was freezing, and her skin sizzled where they connected, smoke rising from the water. Slowly, she was pulled under. The world above vanished. Under the surface, everything was quiet. The light faded, replaced by an eerie blue glow that seemed to pulse from within the water itself. Figures floated all around her. Men, women, children. All pale and motionless, their eyes open and empty. Their hair drifted like seaweed, and their mouths moved in silent agony. Laura tried to scream, but the water filled her throat. The hand that held her tightened, dragging her deeper. Then she saw him, Daniel. He was there, floating in the center of the glowing abyss, his body weightless, his eyes dull but alive with faint recognition. Laura reached for him, bubbles escaping her mouth. "Daniel," she tried to shout. His hand reached toward her, trembling, but something moved between them. A dark shape, rippling like ink. It coiled around him, pulling him back, its form shifting between human and monstrous. "You shouldn't have come," a voice whispered inside her head. It wasn't spoken aloud, but it was everywhere. Inside her mind, inside her chest. The shadow twisted around her, cold tendrils brushing her face. "He was ours. The boy was ours. You stole him," Laura thrashed, desperate, clawing at the dark water. "Take me," she screamed inside her head. "Let them go," the river answered. The darkness tightened, crushing her ribs, pressing against her lungs. Then silence. A moment later, the water erupted. Lily screamed from the shore as the surface burst open. Something floated up, her mother's body, limp and pale, eyes half open. Ethan stepped closer, watching. Then he blinked, once, twice, and his eyes flickered from black to brown again. He gasped, coughing water, like waking from a nightmare. "Mom," he whispered, but Laura didn't answer. The mist began to fade, the forest slowly returning to what it once was. The sun peeked over the horizon, reflecting off the calm river. Ethan turned toward his sister, tears streaming down his face. "It's over," he said softly, but as the wind moved across the water, the ripples formed a single word, carved by the current, whispering from beneath the surface. "No." And for just a second, Ethan's reflection smiled back at him.